Today I'm going to show you how I made my Sailor Maid Venus, which is based off of this artwork from the official Sailor Moon Maid Cafe. And this video will work for any of the inner senshis. The outer senshis wear different outfits, but you can use the same pattern to make a Sailor Moon, Chibi Moon, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, or Venus. To start off, I'm going to show you how I made my apron. This is the pattern I made. It's two separate pieces and is going to be connected by the belt. I have this pattern up as a PDF and you can purchase it on my online store. And the link to find that will be in the description below. The material I used to cut out the apron is called Gaberdine, and it is a tight, kind of stiff fabric, which is going to work perfect for making an apron. You're going to want to cut out 2 pieces of the top and 2 pieces for the bottom, and we're going to be painting on stripes. The first thing you're going to want to do is find the center of the pattern piece and mark that with a line. I'm using a dissolvable fabric pencil, but you can also use chalk. Once you have found your center, take a piece of tape and tape it right over that line. I personally am using electrical tape just because I liked the thickness of it, but you can use masking tape as well. Your lines will just be a little bit thicker. From that center line, you're going to measure over 3/4 of an inch, and you're going to place your second piece of tape with the edge of that tape on that line. Next, you're going to measure over only 1/2 inch, and again place your next piece of tape on the edge of that line. Repeat this process, measuring 3/4 of an inch and then 1/2 inch apart. Repeat it until you are done masking off your entire apron. I'm doing this staggered design because in the reference photo it looks like the colored stripes stagger in thickness. And I eventually ran out of yellow tape, so I ended up using white tape, which you can't really see on camera, but do not fret, the edge of that apron is taped off. So the wider areas are going to be the lighter color, and the thinner areas are going to become our darker accent color. And in my first attempt, I just bought an orange color paint that I liked and mixed it with a fabric medium, mixed that up, and painted the stripes on. And I say my first attempt because this one failed. The paint was too watery and it seeped under the tape, so I had to do everything over again. This time I used thicker tube paint, and I just mixed up a white and a yellow. Still mix in that fabric medium so this paint adheres to fabric very well, but make sure it's thick enough so it's not going to seep under the tape. And then go ahead and paint this on. Remove the tape and you will have beautiful striped lines. And it's okay if it seeps under the tape a little bit. It's natural for any paint to do this. You can actually see up close, if you look really hard at mine, the lines, you can kind of see where the paint seeped, but from far away, it looks fine. Now that we have the front pieces painted, we're ready to attach the linings and the ruffle edges. I purchased a pre-ruffled ribbon at my Joann's. Feel free to pleat it and ruffle it yourself. That just takes a lot more time. I was in kind of a rush while making this costume, so I just bought it by the yard. And here I am sewing the front piece together. So the lining of the apron and the front stripe piece is sandwiched together with the ribbon in between it. So you're just gonna stitch along the edge, leaving about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once that is done, go ahead and turn it right side out and you will see that the ribbon sticks out the edge and looks very, very clean and neat. And you're gonna do the same thing for the top piece and the bottom piece. Finally, you're going to want to top stitch the pieces, so around an 1/8 inch from the edge of the ribbon, top stitch everything down so it lays flat and nice. So I guess I forgot to film putting the pieces together, but this is the top, this is the bottom, this is the waistband, and all I did was pin them together in place on the waistband and then stitch it down. So from the back, you can see the top piece, the bottom piece, and then just that stitching that keeps it all together. The one thing you need to make sure is that your stripes line up. If the edges don't quite line up, that's fine. It's gonna look way better when your stripes line up than if your edges are a little off. Okay, so to make the sash, I'm just cutting out a strip of fabric that's 3 inches wide. And you can see it's on the fold, so it's gonna be double the fabric. And after you've sewn both sides of the waistband together, the total width should be about 2 inches. Flip that thing right side out and top stitch around the entire edge. This time for painting, you're just going to put 1 strip of tape down the exact center and paint both the edges the darker accent color. And as you can see, I painted this after it was finished, and as it was sewn together, you can kind of see the white edge on the top. From far away and in photos, you don't notice it at all. But looking back, I can tell you to paint the top and bottom of the waistband to avoid this on your apron. And now for the butt bow on the back of the apron. And I'll tell you right now, I didn't really have a concrete plan of what I wanted this butt bow to look like in the end. But for my bows, I just cut out 2 rectangles that were 5 inches by 18 inches. Make sure you cut out a front and a back for each of the rectangles. And again, we're gonna tape off where we need to paint the stripes. So in the very middle of the bow, there's a 1/2 inch stripe. So find the center, get your 1/2 inch and put pieces of tape on either side of that 1/2 inch. From that 1/2 inch, measure out 3/4 inch and put your next piece of tape on the top and the bottom. Paint the 3/4 gaps your lighter color and the 1/2 inch gap in the center your darker accent color. And keep in mind, I'm breaking down this tutorial by section, but in real time I was painting all of these at the same time, so I was using the same mix of paint. And at the time I didn't think about it, but you're also going to see the back side of this bow. So after the bow was already constructed, I ended up painting on the back just kind of haphazardly. But before you construct the bow, we need to make it a little more stiff so it holds its shape. So to the front side of the fabric that had the stripes, I attached some medium weight iron-on interfacing. Once that is done, go ahead and put the right sides together of each of the rectangles, sew them together, turn them right side out, and top stitch the entire thing. After that, you should have 2 nice looking rectangles. Alright, I didn't film making the bow because I had to do it a few different times before I got the look I wanted, but I'm going to walk you through and show you visually how I did this. So for the bunny ear part of the bow, that is one of the rectangles with both edges folded back and meeting in the center. And then the middle knot of the bow is a separate piece of fabric that I painted like the waistband with the 2 darker colors on the outside. Then I just hand stitched that middle section around that piece to keep it in place. Then after that was done, I just scrunched up the center of the really long rectangle and hand stitched it in place on the back of the bow. So I know in reality that center knot should go around both pieces of the bow because that's how bows work, but it just didn't look right. It wouldn't lay properly, so this is what I ended up doing to get the look that I wanted. And now for that ruffled MAID headband. So I ended up just using this ribbon that I had left over from making my Harley Quinn cuffs. It is a 3-inch wide polyester white shiny ribbon, and honestly this ended up working out better than fabric. So just one layer of the ribbon wasn't sturdy enough, so I ended up gluing 2 pieces together with Gutermann sewing glue. After that was dry, I just cut out a wavy shape that had 5 humps over the top. I painted the whole thing a brighter white to match my apron, and I just used pure acrylic paint. And again, with more electrical tape, I was taping off the stripes. In the very center, you need a 1/2 inch gap, so find the center of that headband and put a piece of electrical tape on either side of a 1/2 inch middle. To either side of that tape, you need to measure over 3/4 inch, put another piece of tape, measure over 1/2 inch, another piece of tape, until your headband is taped off. And this design is going to look best with the smaller 1/2 inch stripes, so the darker color, ending up in the middle of each hump. So if you actually just want to paint out a flat, straight piece of ribbon and then cut out the humps afterwards, you can totally do that too. And these stripes came out the best of all of them. Oh, they came out so clean and gorgeous. And then to make it ruffled, you're going to pinch in at each dark stripe and just match up the edges of each of that dark stripe and pin it in. So it's about a 1/2 inch tuck. Sew each of those tucks down with a single straight stitch down the bottom. And even though it didn't need it because the whole thing was glued together, I did do a top stitch around the edge just to make the whole thing look coherent. So to attach the ruffle to my head, I ended up just hand sewing on a comb and then 2 bobby pins to each edge so that I could securely lay it flat into my wig. You can totally hand sew it to a hairband, that should be okay, but I didn't want to do that because my girlfriend who made this first, she attached hers to a headband and it kept falling off all day, so I was like, nope, I don't want to risk it, I'm putting it on a comb. Finally, we need to make the underdress. Now, if you look closely at the original reference photo, each of the scouts have a slightly different dress, which I really, really like. And so when I was doing Venus, they're 3/4 sleeves with a ruffle on the end. So what I did, and what pretty much all of the girls in my group did, was buy a dress off of Amazon and then alter it to look right. So this is the dress I bought. I bought it in this orange color, and it comes in pretty much any color that you would need for any of the Sailor Scouts. So you could use this for any of the girls, but I will warn you, this dress was very cheap and it was very thin. So because it was a long sleeve maxi dress, I cut off the sleeves around my elbow length, and I cut off the majority of the dress. Then I used the hem of the dress for the ruffles on the sleeves because it was nice and finished. So I cut off about a 4-inch strip off of the very bottom of that dress. I cut the two sides of that bottom apart, and I sewed each together to make the ruffle that will go around my elbow. I slightly gathered the raw edge in my machine just so it would fit around my arm, and I sewed that into the sleeve. Then I just hemmed up the bottom of the dress where I had cut it to the right length, and that was it. Now, I did mention that this dress is very, very thin, so I actually ended up taking that middle section of the maxi dress that I cut off the bottom, and I kind of wore that as a slip just because the skirt was so see-through. And the final touch to this dress look is the choker. So just taking a scrap piece of fabric from the excess dress that I cut off, I made a tube, top stitched it, and connected the back with a snap. The resin star in the front was a last minute detail. I had this star just left over from actually resin casting my Stevani stars. Just an additional touch, you don't need to do it, but I had it, so I used it. And lastly, because I was Sailor Venus, I needed to make her iconic red hair bow. The pattern for this bow is included in the pattern of the apron, so you can use this for a hair bow for Venus, or you can also use it for the butt bow on the apron if you prefer this style. I ended up using just some leftover red scrap fabric, but to make it more sturdy, I did iron on some medium weight interfacing to both the front and the back piece. Pin right sides together for both the front and the back pieces and stitch them together. I left one side open on each piece so I can turn it right side out. Clip the corner so it doesn't crinkle when you turn it right side out, and then iron it down and top stitch it. Lastly, you just need to make a little rectangle piece to go around the center of the bow. So the droopier looking piece is the back, so place them together with the front on top of the back. Then start to gather up both pieces in the center until you find the right look that you're going for. Then use the center strip that you made to hold the bow into that shape. I just hand tacked that into place, and I hand tacked a barrette bow onto the back of the bow so it would stay in my wig. My wig is from Arta Wigs. It's called the Venus, which, is just clearly perfect for the Venus cosplay. I bought the silky version, which fibers are softer and less likely to get tangled, which I thought was a good idea for such a long wig, and I bought it in the color Honey. The only real styling I did to this was teasing up the bangs to give them that anime floof. Then, just taking a small section of hair above each of the ears, I brought it to the back of the head. And long hair can be rather tricky to pull back into a ponytail, and it can get tangled and you ruin these really nice smooth look that you got going. So what I like to do is take one of those bread twist ties and just use that to wrap it around the fibers. This way you don't mess up your nicely combed and brushed look, and it holds the hair in place. And that concludes how I made every part of this Sailor Maid costume. And again, you can use this tutorial to make any of the outfits for the inner senshis. As for the outer senshis, the girls in my group pretty much bought all of their stuff off of Amazon. So they found dresses that looked similar, plain white aprons and ruffle headbands, and then they altered it if needed, like they shortened the dress or shortened the aprons. All in all of these costumes were super easy to make and super comfy to wear. And it was even more fun because we had such an amazing large group. I will also note that a few of the girls did use ribbon for their stripes and just top stitch down some ribbon if you don't feel like painting them on. But I highly encourage you be creative and get into the mind of your senshi and make your outfit just like she would wear it. Some of the girls put glitter in their stripes, some put rhinestones on their aprons. Ugh, everyone just had so much fun personalizing their cosplays. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and can use it to make any of your Senshi maid dreams come true. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!